Welcome to my YouTube channel. This has been a long time coming for me. I've wanted to do YouTube for as long as I can remember. I started watching makeup videos on YouTube well over a decade ago. Makeup has been a passion of mine for as long as I can remember. I have pictures of me when I was just 5 or 6 years old covered in blush and lipstick. I started wearing a full face of makeup in middle school. No one could stop me. I was doing smoky eyes every day. I worked in the beauty industry for 4 years. I used to work at Ulta on and off, and I was a prestige beauty advisor, so my job was recommending products to people all day long. Recently, I started making videos on TikTok, but realized it's really hard to be in-depth and thorough with teaching people in only 10-minute videos. So I decided to create a YouTube channel and do longer, more in-depth tutorials and a place where I could talk a little bit more because I'm very chatty. I'm brand new to YouTube, so I'm just figuring this out. I just figured out new lighting recently. Eventually I want to upgrade, but I'm just really excited right now. I can't wait to make more videos. I decided to start off my channel by doing a tutorial of one of my favorite makeup looks to do with all of my absolute favorite products. So if you want to see this look, then just keep on watching. We're gonna start off the base today. I'm gonna go in with one of my favorite prep products. This is the Auric Glow Lust. I have mine in the shade Morganite. This is like a radiant luminizer. Think Charlotte Tilbury, Hollywood Flawless Filter, e.l.f. Halo Glow. But this one is really hydrating. It's a little bit thicker of a consistency. It's gonna give you a little bit more glow. I find this preps my skin better rather than just putting like a metallic sheen over my skin. It's actually gonna prep my skin for the foundation. My favorite way to use this product is pumping it into my hands. I'm gonna warm it up between my fingers for a little bit, and I like to smooth it on just like I would a regular primer or moisturizer. You can see how glowy my skin is now. I know I'm gonna put foundation over this, but the glow is gonna show through the foundation. Now that that's kind of settled on my skin, I am gonna go in with my foundation. I recently got this, but I have not put it down since I've gotten it, so it's definitely a new favorite of mine. This is the Charlotte Tilbury Beautiful Skin Foundation. This is medium to full coverage, beautiful dewy finish, perfect for normal to dry skin. Most of the products I'll be featuring on my channel and on my socials are going to be catered towards normal to dry skin. I have dry acne prone skin, but if you want videos for different skin types, I can absolutely do that. I did work at Ulta for about 4 years, so I was always recommending products to different skin tones and types, so I can absolutely help you with that as well. I'm going to go in with 2 pumps on the back of my hand and start dotting it on my face. I always bring it down the neck as well, so there's not a harsh line between my face and my neck. To get the most coverage but the finish that I like out of my foundations, I like to start with a foundation brush and then finish with a sponge to make sure it absorbs all the excess product. It's nice and blended, there's no streakiness, and it's not cakey. My favorite foundation brush of all time is this one from IT Cosmetics. It's their Airbrush foundation brush. It's the one that is a triangle. It is absolutely amazing. I don't know the number of it. I've used it so much the number is rubbed off. So for foundation, if you want to build up your coverage, you do not want to be swiping or swirling. You want to bounce and tap your foundation in. This allows all the pigments in your foundation to actually build on top of each other. If you are swirling or swiping, it's going to give you streaks of coverage and you're going to have more coverage in one area and less in another. This is going to give you the most balanced coverage and the least amount of streakiness. Always make sure to get up by the hairline so there's not a harsh line on your forehead. Now you could stop there. The foundation does look really good because I used a really good brush, But over time, if you have too much product in a certain area, like around my nose or on my chin, it's gonna start settling weird and look really heavy and cakey. So for most foundations, I typically like to use a sponge that is damp, and this is gonna absorb the excess product and just make sure it's not too heavy. It's gonna give me a little bit of a hydrated finish because it's damp, and it's just gonna make sure I have the most seamless blend that I can get. This is the e.l.f. Total Face Sponge. I think it's around $6 or $10, and it's my absolute favorite. I've used it for I think 4 or 5 years now. I just keep repurchasing it. It's something I will always use. And the same thing goes as your foundation brush. You are not swirling or swiping with your sponge. You're always going to bounce. I'm going to make sure to really focus on areas that normally build up and get cakey over the day. So the sides of my nose, underneath my chin, in between the brow. You can see why I love this foundation. It just looks like glowy, juicy skin. It looks very healthy. I prefer to do my concealer after my foundation. Concealer is typically a product that you use to give you extra coverage where needed. So if you do it before your foundation, you're not really gonna know where you need extra coverage, and you're gonna end up using a lot more product than you actually need. One of my favorite concealers is the new Natasha Denona concealer. This is very full coverage, but it is so hydrating. It does not get dry and crusty underneath my eyes. I always want extra coverage under my eyes. I have dark circles, everyone does. So I like to take it right in the inner corner and a little bit down the nose. Most people don't have darkness over here, so adding a ton of extra product is actually going to emphasize the lines. I know there's a new trend of putting in the inner and outer corner, but if you have fine lines or dry skin or texture over here, it is going to actually emphasize the texture because you're just layering unnecessary product. I don't necessarily need more coverage on my chin, but I am going to put some concealer there because I'm always touching my chin or sweating there, so it ends up wearing off a lot easier. So I'm just going to put this as a barrier. I have lots of scarring around my nose, and then I like to use concealer as a base for my eyeshadow and to get rid of any redness or veins. So that is the placement of the concealer. If you are someone who loves using brushes and you want to use a brush for your concealer, I definitely recommend this Hourglass concealer brush. It's nice and precise and angled, so you can really get into the inner corner. But since I have my sponge dampened, I'm just going to go ahead and go straight in with this today. Using the same bouncing method as before. If you had any cream blush, bronzer, or highlight, this is where you would go in next with those. But I prefer powders, so I'm going to go ahead and start powdering my face, and then we'll do the cheeks. This product right here is probably my favorite product of all time. It's definitely my most repurchased product of all time. I've been using it for about 5 years, if not longer. I've gone through at least 20 of these. But it is justified because it's only $5.99 at the drugstore, so it's a steal. This is the Essence Brighten Up Banana Powder. It is an incredibly smooth and brightening under eye powder. I love using this with a brush, with a sponge, with a velour puff. Any way I use it, I absolutely love it. A banana powder is tinted slightly yellow because yellow is going to cancel out any purple tones underneath your eye, so it is going to be more brightening than, say, just a translucent powder. I want a full coverage and super smooth under eye today, so I'm going to use a velour puff to apply this. I load my puff up and then pinch it and start pressing it in under the eye. I'll set my eyelids with it as well. You can see the difference. This eye is much brighter, it's smooth and matte. Now I'm going to set the rest of my face. Even though I am dry, I do like to set my face. Setting my whole face is going to allow for all of my powder bronzers, blushes, and highlights to go on smoothly. If you only set under your eyes and then you have wet foundation here, your bronzer or your blush is going to cling to those wet areas and it's going to be very unblended and patchy. So I like to make sure I have a nice smooth and set canvas to work with. Now since I'm dry, I'm going to go in with a powder that has a little bit of glow to it. This is the e.l.f. Halo Glow setting powder. This is something you can get at the drugstore for like $7 or $8 as well. This is a loose powder, so you just tap it into the cap. And I'll use a big fluffy powder brush for this. If I use something that was denser and smaller, it would put too much powder on my face. I just want a light set, so the fluffier the brush you use, the lighter the set it will be, and the less product you're gonna use. I'm tapping this in rather than swirling. You'll see I'm doing a lot of tapping and bouncing rather than swirling. When I'm blending, I will swirl after I've already tapped the product on. When you tap the product on, especially when you're setting your face, you're making sure not only is everything fully set, but when you start swirling really aggressively, there is a chance that your foundation underneath is going to start separating and it'll be disturbed, which means you're gonna get less coverage. It's gonna look patchy and unblended. So especially when you are setting, you just want to tap everything in. And at the end, then you can kind of gently swipe to make sure you don't have any powder just sitting on top of the skin. My next step is gonna be bronzer. So I'm gonna add some warmth and vibrance to the face. Right now, we are all one dimension. There is no difference in coloration or finish to the skin. It's very flat in one tone. Your face is not naturally like that. Especially in the summer when you are out in the sun is going to kiss the top of your cheekbones, your forehead, your nose. So you want to mimic that and start adding dimension back into the skin. I have the Benefit Hoola Bronzer in a palette right here. This is a nice neutral tone. Your bronzer is going to be neutral to warm. It's very different than contour, which I will explain next. I'm very fair, so I don't like anything too warm because it'll show up orange on me. This is a nice neutral tone where it's not too cool and it's not too warm. I like to start right on the temple and I bring it on the top of my cheekbone. This is where my cheekbone ends. I do not go below this. If you go below this, it's going to look really muddy. It's gonna look like you have dirt on your face and it's gonna drag your face down. You want everything to be lifted up. I always get a little tan on my forehead, right above the brow. So I'm gonna bring it up here as well. And back down. And I like everything on my face to be a very seamless blend. I don't want it to be choppy. So I like bringing my bronzer down to where my blush will be. I like bringing my blush and bronzer into my eyelid where my eyeshadow will be. I like everything to just have a nice gradient and blend together. That is why I bring it down onto my cheek. And then I'm gonna bring it just on the outer corner of the eyelid as well. And that's gonna provide a nice blend and starting the transition of my eyeshadow. I'll bring it down the nose as well. I don't go on the sides of the nose and I don't go right in between the brow. I just kind of start on the bridge and go down to the tip of the nose. And then the very tip of the chin, I bring it as well. As you can see, my face is a little bit darker than my body, so I like to bring the bronzer down a little bit and kind of feather it onto my chest and neck. Okay, next step is going to be contouring. So contour is very cool toned, as you can see. It's almost look like it's a gray powder. Contour is to mimic shadows on the face. So you never want to put contour above your cheekbone. It's always going to be right below. The easiest way to find out where to put your contour for your cheekbones, you can actually feel where your cheekbone stops. And when you place your finger there, it'll leave a little indent. You can see mine stops right here. You want to take a small little brush and go right below. I start right here where my ear is, and I stop where that indent is. I don't want to bring it too far over here. I don't want to bring it up, and I don't want to bring it down here. I just want it right underneath my cheekbone. This is going to give you definition, and it's going to sculpt the face as well. Contour can also make things appear smaller by mimicking a shadow if you don't already have one. I have a double chin, so I like to make that look smaller. So I'm going to put contour underneath my chin. And when I'm looking forward, that's now a little bit more concealed because there's a darker shadow underneath, so your eye isn't going to be as drawn to it. A lot of people contour their nose as well to make it look smaller. I don't always do that, but if I do, I'm just going to barely sweep on the sides of it and bring it around. This looks pretty harsh, very unblended right now. I did that on purpose because I always go back in with a clean duo fiber stippling brush. So this is what it looks like. It's very, very fluffy. These are great for blending. Now I've got all of my pigment where I want it, so I'm just gonna very gently, I'm not putting pressure where you're pushing the brushes up against your face. I'm just barely putting pressure and gently feathering it. It's gonna just make sure everything is blended together. There's no harsh lines. It doesn't look patchy. And doing it gently is key so that you don't disturb the foundation underneath, because then it will absolutely get patchy and look unblended. Sorry that I'm always looking over here. This is where the camera is and this is where the screen is. So I apologize, I'm never looking at the camera while I'm actually blending. It is much more blended, so now we're ready to move on to blush. Hourglass Mood Exposure is a baked blush, and it's my favorite blush right now. And I like putting it on an angled brush like this because I find it gives me the most pigment right on the apples of my cheek, and then it hugs up to my temple. A lot of people have been told to smile and put your blush on the apples of your cheek, but what happens when you stop smiling? It drags it down. If you smile and put your blush on while you're smiling, your blush is going to end up all the way down here, and that is going to drag the face down so much. Instead, I want you to start at your apples while your face is relaxed and go up to your temple. This will draw the eye up and give you more of a lifted appearance. And then I like to take a little bit and dust it over my eyelid, so it's all a nice blend. I'm sweeping, I'm not swirling, and you could also tap. It just takes a lot longer to build up the pigment that way. But I'm just sweeping it up. And then I like to put a little blush on the tip of my nose just to blend everything together. I've always done that. My mom's always done that. That's how she taught me how to do it. I love being glowy. I love looking healthy and hydrated. So I always use highlighter. If you are someone that does not like to look glowy, you like to look nice and matte, you can absolutely skip this step. You can even use a glowy blush so you don't have to have a really intense highlight. I used to put my highlight in a C shape right along the top of my cheekbone, but as time went on, I noticed that it was really unflattering, especially in photos, because I have a lot of texture right here, especially when I smile, and it would just emphasize it and look really metallic. So now I put it on the very top of my cheek so that when I smile, it's beaming. I'm gonna go in with the Charlotte Tilbury Face Architect Highlighter. This is in the shade Moonlit Glow. I'm going to take a small fluffy brush, and I'm just gonna hit right on the top of my cheek. This is almost like a blush topper rather than like a traditional highlight placement. I almost bring it up to my under eye, but I don't go all the way up. Highlight is going to catch the eye I also put it on the bridge of my nose and tip of my nose. That's where I naturally get glowy or oily throughout the day, so I like to mimic that. I'm very dry. I don't get oily very often, but it looks really nice and healthy when I do have a glow to the skin, so I'm always trying to mimic that with makeup. And then I like a little glow to the forehead. I don't go very heavy. I'm just barely touching the brush to my face. But I do like a little tiny bit of shine on the forehead. That way when I smile, there's a nice little bit of highlight there, but it's not overpowering my face or looking super heavy and metallic or glittery. This next step, I almost always do this, but it's absolutely not necessary for the average person. I'm going to go underneath my contour and bronzer and sculpt out with a foundation powder. This is really helpful though if you're new to this and you always get your bronzer and contour too low. This can really help. I am using a little rectangular brush here. I'm just using any foundation powder. This is the infallible one from L'Oreal. You can use a banana powder that you use under your eyes, a translucent powder, foundation powder, whatever powder you have that's lighter. And I'm going to go right below the contour, all the way down to my jawline. This is going to make sure nothing is too low, and it's actually going to sculpt that face a lot more so that your cheekbone pops a lot more. Now this is too harsh of a line, so I like to take my brush and just feather on top, up and down, very gently. That way it's not just a super sharp line. And you can see it's nice and clean under here, and it makes that cheekbone really stand out. Okay, this is the skin with my cheeks all done. So now I'm going to move on to brows, then we'll do eyes and then lips. I love the ease of a tiny little brow pencil. This is the micro brow pencil from NYX. It's got a little spoolie on one end and a very precise brow pencil on the other. I like a very precise and small brow pencil because I can really mimic the little brow hairs, and it makes it look the most natural rather than really harsh or heavy. I always start off by brushing up my brows and putting them into the place that I want them. I take my brow pencil and see I have a little bald spot here. I want to connect that. So instead of drawing or having my brow pencil angled like this, I'm gonna take it and just gently rest it in between my fingers because I don't want to apply too much pressure, and I'm gonna just flick it back and forth. This is going to create little tiny strokes, and it's gonna look like brow hairs. Look a little bit more defined and structured, but they're not super heavy or harsh. I often skip the front of my brow because they're full enough on their own, but if you are someone that needs help in that department, I like to rest my pinky on my nose and just lift up and flick it again. I'm never going to create a harsh line underneath or on top. This is my favorite brow gel. This is the Benefit 24-Hour Brow Setter. I love a clear brow gel just to set everything in place and lift it up so that it doesn't move throughout the day. So I just brush up, and as I get to the arch, I start to go over. And it gives me really fluffy brows so they look fuller as well. Time to move on to eyeshadow. I'm going to do a pretty simple look today, so it's not a 2-hour video. I'm going to go in with a neutral palette that I absolutely love. This is definitely an investment. These are very pricey eyeshadow palettes, but the quality is absolutely there if you're wanting to invest. This is the Natasha Denona Glam palette. Beautiful neutral colors and great shimmers. It's important to have really blended eyeshadow, right? So the easiest way to do that is to have colors blending together. So you don't want to go in with your darkest color right off the bat. You want to start with your lightest and go to your darkest. That way there's a nice transition and everything has something to blend into. This is a really great beginner-friendly palette because some of the names are actually transition, crease, center eyelid, blend, lash line. It kind of tells you exactly where those shadows can go. So I am going to take the shade Transition. A transition shade is usually the first shade that you put down that will allow all the other colors to blend on top of it. It's like your base shadow. I always tap off the excess on the top of my palette. That way when you go in, there's not a ton of shadow falling out underneath. I'm taking a nice big fluffy blending brush for this first shadow. And I'm going to start on the outer corner of my eye. I am swirling this in circular motions, and then I'm going to start with whatever is left over on the brush. I'm going to bring it in just where my brow starts. I don't want super dark shadow in my very inner corner. It will close the eye in. I want the most pigment on the outer corner of my eye. So I always am going to start there and then work my way in with whatever is left on the brush. I'm keeping this mainly in the crease. As you are blending, it is going to raise above that. So you never want to start above that because then your eyeshadow is just going to raise all the way up to your brow. So keep it as low as you can at first because the fluffier the brush, the more it's going to blend that out. For me, the darker the shadow, the smaller the brush I'm going to use. So I'm going to take a smaller blending brush and I'm going to go in with the crease shade. I'm going to go right over where I had it before, just keeping it a little bit lower and a little bit less into the inner corner. This is going to layer on top of it beautifully. Now I'm going to go in with an even smaller blending brush. I'm going to use the shade Smoke from this palette and keep this right on the outer corner. I'm not going to bring it up and over. We're going to start keeping it nice and tight to the outer corner. Now, if you want to, you can absolutely go back in and use your first blending brush that has the lightest color on and go back and just blend between each step. This is definitely going to give you a more seamless blend. It'll make sure everything is soft and not too harsh. Now for my very outer corner, I'm going to use the shade Lash Line. I'm going to take this angled shader brush and I'm just going to tap that right on the very outer corner of my eye. Go in again with my first blending brush and very gently blend that out. I don't want to do it so aggressively that I lose all the definition. So I am doing it gentle, but I do want it to blend at the same time. So you have to put a little bit of pressure on there. For under my eyes, I'm just going to take a little fluffy shader brush and I'll go in with the color Smoke. I'm going to go from my outer corner to the middle of my eye. I'm going to use this Brow Bone shade from the palette and I'm going to put that from my inner corner to the middle of my lid. You can use your finger or a flat shader brush like this. And I'm just going to sweep that. Using your finger will give you the most pigment, but if you want something a little softer, you can use a brush. To make sure there's not a harsh line, you can go back in with any brush that you used and soften it. I'm just going right back and forth to make sure it's nice and blended. Now you can just do mascara, but I am going to do lashes. I love wearing lashes, so I will start off with mascara as a base to them. This is just the L'Oreal Telescopic Lift. I'm just going to do one coat since I am wearing lashes today, but you can build up as many coats if you want if you're just doing mascara. And don't forget your bottom lashes either. I'm going to use the Kiss lashes in Pompadour, the Kiss lash glue, and some tweezers. Always let your glue get tacky before you try and apply. If you don't let your lashes get tacky and somewhat dry for about 30 seconds to a minute, When you apply, it's not going to stay in place and it is going to slip and slide all over. It's going to make your life way harder. Lashes are on. Last two steps are going to be lips and setting spray. And I have a very small upper lip, so I always like to overline with lip liner. This is Anastasia Muted Mauve. I like to start on the Cupid's bow. And I go just over my natural lip line. For lipstick, I'm going to use this Maybelline Vinyl Ink Super Stay Liquid Lip in the shade Cheeky. These are a long-wearing lip vinyl, so they're going to stay glossy for hours, but they are going to be transfer-proof. But the way to make them transfer-proof is make sure that you shake them up. You want to really aggressively shake up the product to make sure it's all mixed together. And when you do apply it, you're not going to go back and forth a ton. You're not going to move your lips around together. You're going to wait 30 seconds to a minute so it gets nice and tacky, and then you'll be transfer proof. Last steps are going to be setting spray and finishing spray. My favorite setting spray right now is this Makeup Revolution Infinite Setting Spray. You want to keep it about a foot away from your face and drench your face in it. Make sure everything is coated. Want glow, then you're going to let that dry and finish with a finishing spray. You can use MAC Fix Plus. My favorite is the Peach and Lily Glass Skin Veil Mist. This is actually a skincare product, but it gives the most dewy skin ever. And that is the completed makeup look, everyone. I want to say thank you for watching my first YouTube video. If you have any suggestions of what you want to see next from me, please leave it in the comments below. I am brand new to YouTube, so please subscribe, like this video, follow me. I'm also on TikTok and Instagram at LeanneCBeauty. I would love to have you over there as well.